And now it is. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our first presentation of Thunderdog eSports Top Dog Season 4. This is TheDannySaur alongside Lore, and spawning in the bottom right-hand corner, sporting the red trunks, we have Team Ascension's Kamker.
And up in the top left-hand side of King Sigjon Station, we have Integrity Gaming's PandaBearMe as a loser.
And PandaBearMe, we've seen him a couple times, always gives off some good games, so I'm sure today will be no exception. So, Laura, we're going to have, of course, a little bit of downtime. I mean, how have you been? You're kind of new-ish to the Thunderdog casting, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, since this is my first time casting alongside you.
Yeah, well, I've done some casting, I've done some team stuff, not in a little while, probably about a couple years. Got into Starcraft 2 after it came out, so I've been playing it about as long as anyone could be. Just kind of always played the Protoss pieces, was on a clan, did some team stuff, did some competitive gaming and some casting, and also I design maps. Anyone wants to check those out, I go by Lore Starcraft on Team Liquid. And but yeah, it's pretty much me. Excited to get casting for Thunderdog though. Yeah,
that'll be pretty cool. So I will at least rely on you for your map expertise as one of those things. It's one thing to talk about maps, quite another to actually build and design and try to, integrate some cool pieces there. So both these players, nothing surprising here about the openings. No cheese, despite a little bit of chatter early on. I believe it was Team Ascension who were saying that they would cheese all the time, every game. But so far, no such luck.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about the Top Dog League is how important it really is for these teams, and you can see that through their openings. They're not willing to throw away any games based on a useless or silly cheese. They're both opening very standard and very, very solid. The Zerg, of course, with the hatch first. Everybody does that against Terran all the time. His spawning pool will be finishing up in just a minute. Be ready to start speed.
Yeah, and that is, you bring up an interesting point. So we do Pro League if you guys are new. So this will basically be 5v5, but every player will play. So we'll see 10 different players. And it's a little bit different because you don't get those odd matchups. On occasion, teams get in kind of a desperate mode where, oh no, I don't know if I can quite beat this player. Maybe I should cheese. Or, maybe he just played super long games, so I'm going to cheese him to try to catch him off guard. And he's not quite on the top of his game. None of that happens here. So you have usually players' best builds each and every time, because they really only have to prepare one at a time per matchup. So just a little bit different style. So we'll see how that all works out in these couple of games. But everything here, nothing too far out of the ordinary, which is going to be pretty much how most of these games start off.
Right, and I'm interested to see what the effect the map is going to have on this matchup. This is one where the map actually does have a bit of room. It is a decently sized map. There are enough bases. There's 6 bases per player. But it basically comes down to this central pathway between these two high grounds and controlling those bases for a lot of players. The very high level players will actually use the extremities of the map. These backdoor passages that a lot of people may not even be familiar with at all. But the best players are going to take advantage of any terrain that they can, especially in a TVZ matchup. So I expect for the Zerg to push out to the extremities and the Terran to try to abuse that here.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're talking about, I'm highlighting a couple of them on the map, as this map is very, very, very twisted. And one of the things that players always have to evaluate, on each map, and I'm sure you designing them, you kind of come up with your own ways, is, okay, which base is going to be my third, which one is going to be my fourth, etc. Do I have choices in these? I mean, obviously, in almost every map, your expansion, they call it a natural expansion for a reason, nice and easy to get there. But we see now the Zerg player actually expanding to the top side of the map, so maybe wanting to push right and maybe hold down those bases. It gets tough really to take these top right and kind of bottom left expansions because you are so far spread out. But, it all depends on what kind of army you're building. Maybe you can get away with it if you have a very mobile army, or if you're a powerhouse, maybe you want to condense things down a little bit. But all those little tiny choices sometimes are overlooked in the course of these games.
Mm-hmm. And this is definitely a map and situation where you need to have a plan going into it. This is, of course, going to be your third base with the Zerg is building right here. But where do you go for your fourth? The middle ground fourth that is perhaps closer to your base, but it's also harder to defend. And every single push from the Terran is going to be coming up through there. You're going to be fighting all the time. Of course, the dealing with the cliff harass in the upper right-hand side from the Zerg perspective is also something to take in consideration. So it's going to all come down to when is he wanting to tech, when does he want to build his units, what plan does he have going into it. Right now we see some Hellbat harass coming up right up the front.
Yeah, and very, very interesting is he got the upgrade that now allows those Hellbats to be healed by the medevac as they convert to biological. So very, very interesting. And PandaBearMe in a little bit of trouble here as those Hellbats out in front are eating everything, and those Marines are doing all the DPS in the back.
Yeah, he's in a bad position. He had 4 queens, but he's got nothing in the way of roaches out on the field. Really took a very, very risky, kind of a greedy play there, not getting those up early enough in time for this. A lot of Terrans will do this Hellion pressure, but it looks like he did a great job with those Banelings connect on the Hellbats. Sometimes it's really hard to do.
Yeah, absolutely, and they just kind of popped out, and Kamker here jumping in.
Drones.
So many drones, we're trying to get him, and no, he decides, all right, no, not worth it, at least for now. He may turn around. And, I mean, as we look at that, I mean, Terran did lose a little bit, but you got to think that the drones loss with 11 for PandaBearMe is really going to cripple that economy.
That really is something to consider. I mean, sure, PandaBearMe didn't lose the game right there at all. He defended reasonably well. But at the same time, he's behind supply against this Terran. Just going to make a question as his third command center finishes up, and the Zerg gain a reasonable footing from this position.
Absolutely. Very interesting push. One of the rarely used upgrades is that transformation for those Hellions to go into Hellbat mode. A lot of times you don't see that just because you kind of build one or the other and you don't need to switch. But very interesting push there by switching them and then having the medevac right behind to give them a little bit more beef out in front. Really, really cool maneuver. And we see a couple of Banshees and Cloak being researched back at his main base. So that'll be another thing Zerg has to deal with, but already has Spore Crawlers and things in those mineral lines ready to deflect that. But Banshees are pretty powerful, even if you just have them in kind of 1v1 situations.
Yeah, I really feel like this is one of those builds that you just try over and over again on ladder, and it keeps working for some reason because it's at a really wonky time, and if Zergs are skipping roaches, then you do guaranteed damage. And I think these Banshees are just going to contribute to the main army. The harassment may be defended as far as that aspect with the Spore Crawlers. They're coming in here and the transformation's happening. All these Zerglings. Oh, good Baneling connections though.
Yeah, and a great transfuse, and that really, you have to question the decision to actually transform all of those, as they took a ton of damage during that transformation, and I felt like if he would have kited, it would have been a lot better. Only has Zerglings, PandaBearMe that is, so he didn't have any roaches or any real strong response, so, I mean, that's pretty tough, and now both players getting 1-1 to finish at near identical timings, so that will not affect anything, but I really thought Kamker was in a better position there, but PandaBearMe took advantage of the situation. Kamker, it looks like, is going to try and continue a lot of pressure as he's been marching across the field many, many times.
Yeah, this style that he's doing is a decent kind of mix of units that complement each other, low medevac, so he has to attack over and over again to make this work. At the same time, the Spire is not yet finished for the Zerg. It's kind of a late Spire. So we're going to see what kind of response he can have, but he's going to need a lot of Banelings and a lot of good connections to stop this push.
Yeah, and taking out a ton of creep there. Missed 2 tumors on the back end. That'll really help our Zerg player rebuild that quite quickly, as those are active tumors. And now Banelings coming into the back.
Banelings from the backside. Not getting the connections they got last time.
Yeah.
Nice spread by the Terran.
Unbelievable spread. As you can see, all of those units are so low, but none of them have died. Oh, and picking off the Banelings as they are running away. He's got that big Marauder out in front, which takes 2 shots and 1 Baneling on 2 Marines. Not good trades there. And so Kamker's going to continue his assault a little bit, but he is...
These early rally points are right into the teeth of the Marines. Now more Hellions are here again. Of course, they can transform into Hellbats at any time.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty rough, and there goes the transformation and marching in here. Lots of DPS despite having almost no health. Look at those Marines and how low they are. Some of them couldn't even stim that last time. Now a two-pronged attack going down. This is looking very, very rough for PandaBearMe as he is evacuating in several locations.
These Banelings get a couple of connections. This is actually kind of vulnerable. I think that PandaBearMe is actually going to be able to clean this up to just how low health those Marines are. But at the same time, it's going to be really rough. I don't think he can recover from this. His third base is really under siege right now.
Yep, and there is the GG and kind of